To continue looking at the Gemini symbolism we've been looking at and apply it to the popular culture of our moment, I couldn't help but notice that even the NBA game that we're currently watching encodes Gemini's connections to contact and communion with this astral double or holy guardian angel theme that we've explored before. And so, in our last episode, we saw that Gemini rules over the arms of the human body, and that these arms also become the pillars that resonate with the, pillars of the Temple of Solomon, the pillars of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, the Twin Towers, and all these other things. And so, with film, we get this swirling of symbolism that happens around these symbols. And one of the symbols that comes up as we look at this holy guardian angel symbolism of the astral double Gemini is the white rabbit. And actually, I've done quite a bit of work looking at the symbolism of the white rabbit and how it's entered into pop culture and how it entrains with this communion or contact, the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. I just had a funny feeling when the NBA Finals entered my awareness that there was something about basketball and aliens that rang a bell, and it was Space Jam. Space Jam is where we see a character from the human world interacting with a character from this cartoon world, and also aliens and stuff. And so what we see is a really fascinating connection here between the kind of astral plane that cartoons kind of represent and come from, kind of coming along with this mystery of aliens and contact, and it's like interdimensional, and so what we see with Gemini 2026 is like this Space Jam moment happening where, I don't know, the NBA Finals invoking the Twin Towers from the last time that this happened in 1999 with the NBA Finals. There's this kind of just pattern in poetry and consciousness that we're having this kind of Space Jam moment in culture right now. And so when I saw the white rabbit in Space Jam, it reminded me a lot of the holy guardian angel symbolism that I've explored from the white rabbit in Donnie Darko. And so this brings us further down the rabbit hole to where we see that there's this kiss that happens, where Michael Jordan kisses Bugs Bunny in the movie, and that really rang a bell for me when I saw the kiss thing, because also astrologically this week we saw Jupiter kiss Venus, and this was really beautiful as it happened right next to the Gemini twins in the sky. And so to me there was this beautiful vibe of Jupiter with its benefaction and increasing energy, and then Venus with its beautiful goddess energy. I felt like there was this beautiful moment where like the Gemini twins and Venus and Jupiter were just like radiating this kind of beautiful connection between the self and the astral self. This like, this holy marriage that happens between the lower and the higher self, or the fire and the water within us, And so I just think that Gemini encodes this beautiful alchemical wedding symbolism. It's seen in the tarot card for Gemini itself. And so we also see that this kiss that Michael Jordan has with this white rabbit in Space Jam invokes the poetic kisses that even Aleister Crowley uses when he was talking about his holy guardian angel in his work Conch's Own Pax, where he describes kind of like initiation on the Tree of Life in regard to contact with his like innermost self, his holy guardian angel. And so it's interesting that Crowley calls contact with this innermost self kisses, and it's like this alchemical wedding that's pictured in Gemini, is completed with a kiss, and so we see Bugs Bunny kissing Michael Jordan in Space Jam contains this like beautiful metaphor for this white rabbit as a metaphor for the holy guardian angel. And so, if you follow that symbolism, which I've done before in my other videos like Film a Thin Skin or Membrane, we see that the rabbit constellation Lepus is actually considered the boat of Osiris in the Egyptian cosmology. And so the white rabbit, in a certain sense, can also be seen as like the boat to the underworld. And if you go to Alice in Wonderland, you see that the white rabbit is what kind of leads you to the underworld. And in that underworld, she goes down and encounters this queen who has this 40-second rule, which is that no one over a high can enter the court. And this is Mot in the Egyptian spirituality, that when you go into this underworld or astral plane, you encounter the goddess of balance, Mot, and she weighs your heart against a feather. And so this rabbit, this white rabbit symbolism, even before we had it in, Alice in Wonderland, it was encoded in the heavens that the white rabbit is what stood under the hunter Orion, and to the Egyptians it was the boat to the other world, And then you can also think of it as like something that Orion and the dog star Sirius are chasing, and that going down the rabbit hole is kind of guided by Sirius, the dog star. And I explored this in my videos, the dog star and the rabbit hole, which are featured on YouTube and my Vimeo from probably about 15, 20 years ago almost at this point. But if you look at this symbolism of the white rabbit, there's actually really consistent synchronicity that surrounds it. And I've explored this before, but I want to move along and talk a little bit about how this connects to the astral plane. And there's some interesting stuff going on here that's hinted at by this kiss and this kind of Space Jam that's opening up, because Space Jam features this Toon world opening up. And I couldn't help, when I was thinking about the pillars of Gemini and the Toon world opening up, I thought about, Christopher Lloyd in Back to the Future, but he's also in Pagemaster as kind of this guide, this psychopomp into the Toon world or the spirit world. And it's a beautiful movie that, I really recommend. But so he plays this psychopomp, and this kind of Hierophant, basically, and the Hierophant is actually featured in the Lover's Tarot card as Mercury overseeing the alchemical marriage, and it's this kiss. And so it's Mercury that also represents, in a sense, the holy guardian angel, in this sense, like overseeing this marriage of opposites within the self. And so with Christopher Lloyd, we see him in both Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And he's in that movie. We've got the White Rabbit and the Toon world opening up again, and this kind of initiation into Toon world. And then you move further along in his career, and you've got the Pagemaster connection with him opening up the Toon world right between the Gemini pillars of the Twin Pines Mall. And then in Back to the Future, we see a pretty wild synchronicity that was pointed out by other synchro mystics in the past, that, Doc is this kind of like time-traveling Hierophant in, Back to the Future, and you actually see him come back to the Twin Pines Mall to prevent like a terrorist attack. And there's just incredible synchronicity that, is featured in Back to the Future that relates to the Gemini pillars and the Twin Pines Mall, which, in one scene they're the Twin Pines, and another they're the Lone Pines, which mirrors the Twin Towers becoming the One World Trade Center and stuff. And so that was pointed out in Back to the Future Predicts 9/11, which was made by someone from our little sync camp over at the Sinkhole many years ago, and that was kind of went viral for a bit. But what we see is that Christopher Lloyd is a resonator for this connection with this holy guardian angel and contact and interdimensional stuff. He kind of plays like this cosmic Hierophant in a lot of his roles, and I was starting to think about that, and I was resonating in my own life with this theme of the field has been coming up, kind of thinking about the field of awareness. And I was looking at the movie The Sheep Detective when it came out during Taurus, and thinking about the Hierophant as a shepherd and the shepherd staff that the Hierophant holds. And then that made me think of how sports kind of always invokes these angels in the outfield, this contact, this spiritual communion. There's a bunch of movies that feature it, like Field of Dreams, and in Signs we see the Swing Away Merrill thing, and angels in the outfield, and a bunch of stuff like that. And it's almost like as if the battlefield of sports invokes the ancestors and the ancestral guidance of all the players on the field, and there's this spiritual element to sports that you can almost feel in the air when you're watching the games, that there's all this ancestral guidance and all of this epic destiny woven into these events and stuff. And so that's an interesting way that, sports and this holy guardian angel, this true self, this contact marriage with the self, is kind of invoked by sports, and this field being the field of awareness, or the field of dreams, is also the field of consciousness that's opening up, and maybe kind of having this spiritual resurgence is bringing open this Toontown sensation of the collective unconscious opening back up, and the spiritual plane opening back up as we come back to Our Lady the Goddess. What you get with Christopher Lloyd too is, he always plays a bit of a mercurial kind of mad doctor, and this is that thing that comes with Mercury is Mercury rules over the oscillations of duality, and so when someone is mercurial, that's where you get this kind of like Mad Hatter thing, and even I believe we also see Christopher Lloyd is in some version of a Wizard of Oz thing, where I forget what he plays, but I know he plays a role in the Wizard of Oz as well, and contains once again more symbolism about this spiritual plane, or this astral plane that's opening up. Of course, Christopher Lloyd not only plays this Mad Hatter in one thing, but he plays an alchemist in another thing, and then he even plays Mr. Crowley in a movie called I'm Not the Serial Killer. And we see a fascinating connection there, because Crowley is the person who describes this holy guardian angel and the kisses we talked about before, and he contacted his gray alien ET looking entity named Lamb in New York City in 1918, and this brings us back to Communion, which features the Twin Towers on the cover and an entity that looks exactly like Lamb in the background, which has been the subject of a lot of conversation. I find it rather sinky as well that, around the time of the arrival of the entity Lamb and UFOs and all this stuff, you've also got Jack Parsons, creating the jet fuel that gets us to the moon, supposedly, and all that, and then this kind of brings up the Babylon working, where L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons tried to manifest the goddess Babylon in human form. But I think it's also just kind of interesting to note here that, this beginning of this paranormal UFO reality tunnel thing kind of cracks open around that time, and they're working as kind of symptomatic of the return of this goddess, and if you look at Babylon as the return of the suppressed divine feminine, coming at the end of a solar patriarchal era, the apocalypsism of this, revelation of the goddess Babylon is not maybe quite as destructive, but a regenerative vision of an apocalypse, So that's been on my mind lately, because along with the return of the goddess in, a lot of different ways, in both spirituality and in, feminine energy and culture and all these things, we've got, the dawning of the age of Aquarius and the return of this goddess energy. And with it feels like, comes her body, which is, also this astral plane, this spiritual plane of existence, and this astral light that she also kind of represents as well, and that's what brings us to this plasma stuff that's been coming up a lot lately. Plasma science, to me, feels like we're discovering the body of Our Lady, and that we're discovering this astral light and this astral substance, and I think, Disclosure just came out the other day that they're talking about bipedal plasmoid life, and, you go to Philip K. Dick and you've got the plasmate, which is, this light substance that he speaks of in his Gnostic adventure Valis, where he explores synchronicity, and this kind of very thing I'm exploring here with all of this kind of expression of the body of the goddess in this poetic way that seems to be mythic and poetic and beautiful. And so that's what I've gathered all this here together today to collect, is because as I'm looking at Gemini 2026 and the symbolism of the double self, this astral self, holy guardian angel, and contact, and basketball and all this stuff in the air, it seems like we're really in this little Space Jam moment, and that Toontown is kind of opening up. And, as Toontown's opening up, the government's also issuing warnings saying, if you feel like you're being contacted, don't try to attempt contact back and all this stuff. And to me, it really does seem like there's this spiritual quality to disclosure that has to do with the return of this goddess and the return of magic and the return of the astral Toontown of our own collective unconscious kind of opening up for all of us. And so, maybe I hope this Gemini reflection helps everybody else on their own cosmic journey and their own gnosis when looking at the symbolism of Gemini and how it reflects in our popular culture. So may you have a blessed communion in Gemini 2026. I'd like to leave you with a little carrot, a wild bunny synchronicity to reflect on in this Space Jam moment while we're reflecting on our holy guardian white rabbit double self in Gemini. If you take a look at the end of Space Jam: A New Legacy, Bugs Bunny dies, transforms into his rainbow body, and then turns into the 8-pointed Spirit Star UAP that we just saw disclosed. So we literally have Bugs Bunny being one of the first cartoons to feature aliens and UFOs, Bugs himself constantly featuring aliens and UFOs and all that, and then in this 2021 film, we have him turn into the famous star UAP. This just blew my mind when I saw this. And so I leave you with that, where this mysterious white rabbit, holy guardian angel, communion, contact, symbolism all swirls together in Gemini 2026 during this exciting Knicks game. So, my last statement I'd like to say here is my mayor is Muslim, my logosphere is live. Praise be to the goddess and communion in 5. Signing off live from the logosphere, Indra's Net. Peace in, peace out.